On today's show, understanding the value of the 4th overall pick that the Houston Rockets hold and what they might be able to accomplish with it. Also, the Toronto Raptors and their interest in trading into the top 4 of this year's NBA draft, and that could mean either with the Rockets directly or with one of those other teams, and how that might help the Rockets this year. Plus, we take a look at 2 Rockets legends, Eric Gordon, Patrick Beverley. Which player would you rather see in a Rockets jersey again next season? All that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
Hey, Houston fans, I am so happy.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I want your thoughts. Would you rather see Eric Gordon or Patrick Beverley in a Rockets jersey next season? Let us know in the YouTube comments. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on the way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for making LOR part of your day every single day. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, Frank, from the Rockets Chop Shop. You can follow on Twitter at FTank58, and also be sure to check in with the Rockets Chop Shop at HTX Chop Shop on Twitter as well, and on the YouTube channel. Now, Frank, this past week, there was a lot of hubbub in the Rockets community of surrounding trades and hypothetical trades and the trade machine and all that. And I think what I want to focus on here for a minute is trying to understand some of the value behind what this 4th overall pick maybe means for the Rockets, because I think when I look at any hypothetical trade situation, whatever, I try, and I don't know if you do this too, but I try to take my red tinted shades off, and I try to be as objective about it as I can. But inherently, what happens with trade hypotheticals, right, with any fan base, this isn't just the Rockets, it's with any fan base, we overvalue our own assets and we undervalue the assets of other teams. And my guy, Kelly Eco, I love Kelly to pieces. He put out an article with some hypothetical Rockets trades in there, and man, they were pretty rough around the edges, and that's putting it lightly. So
very.
I don't know, I don't know if there's just a misconception about what this 4th pick could potentially be worth, but to me, a top 4 pick in a draft with some serious top-heavy talent in this draft is worth a lot. Like, it's worth, to me, an established borderline kind of star player. And when I've discussed this with other Rockets fans, with, guys who cover other teams around the league, that seems to be the general sentiment, is that pick could actually get you a pretty decent haul.
Yeah, I mean, I think what is happening, or I'm going to assume what happened, is a really undervaluing of that pick, overvaluing of players around the league, and also the dynamics of this draft specifically. I think the Wemby phenomenon kind of skews how we are viewing the rest of these players, because Wemby is such a one-off, and he's almost to a tier in himself. If you remove Wemby from this draft and you look at the talent going down, it's still a pretty strong draft. For example, Scotty Barnes was the 4th pick in Jalen's class when he was drafted. Where would a Scotty Barnes fit in this draft? And when you start thinking about some of these, and this is a guy that's the rookie of the year, however you feel about it, I'm actually high on Scotty Barnes. So I think that all kind of mixed together have people kind of going all sorts of different ways, but it's still a top 5 pick, and the top 5 pick is still going to be a premium one of the highest premium picks you will have in the NBA. I see the draft picks as currency, and that's top dollar. So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of just misevaluation going on with these assets, whether it's the players or the picks itself.
You know, and I wonder if there's this could be an interesting thought experiment. And I thought of this mid-segment, so I'm throwing Frank for a loop here too.
Bro, let's go.
If we were to look at, and this has been an exercise that's been kind of thrown out there, you know, in the draft community or whatever, kind of ranking some of this year's prospects as they would rank against previous draft prospects. One that we've thrown out there is like, where would you take Scoot Henderson? Like Scoot Henderson would go number 1 overall in like every previous draft, you know, all the way back to like, say, 2019, right? Zion would be the one guy where you're like, okay, you'd probably maybe still take Zion over Scoot as a prospect, right? So if you were to maybe rank the prospects from these last like 3 or 4 drafts, like where would some of the prospects in this year's draft kind of come into play? And I think that maybe would help paint a better picture as to how valuable the 4th pick is, right? And the type of prospect that you might be able to ultimately get. So if we were to just go through like a top 10 list, and we're doing this on the fly here. So like what?
Right.
We put Wemby number 1, right? That's pretty easy.
Right.
Okay, so Wemby number 1.
How many years? How far back are we going?
Let's say we'll go through the 2021 draft. So
okay, make it easy.
So the last 3, right? So so what? Wemby
so you got
number
Wemby
1
1?
seems pretty easy. Yeah, Wemby number 1. I think that's consensus, right? Wemby number 1.
Right.
Okay.
I would go probably, my opinion, I think Paolo goes 2.
Paolo goes 2. Okay, wow. See, I would differ like crazy there. I would probably go. I think I would go either Scoot Henderson or Chet Holmgren further up on that tier list.
You know,
like
the reason I
the
say,
spot.
and I know it might be just a little bit of retrospective, looking at him from after what he's done. But I mean, the skill set, obviously the premiums are self-creators. That's why Cade was a higher stock than Jalen, because he was a self-creator and somebody that could generate for other people as well. That's really kind of what bubbles up to the tops of the draft. And then I think Paolo, with his size and self-creation, and to me, he was always the number 1 pick out of Jabari's class, and it wasn't really nothing up for debate there. I just think the size really puts him over the top. But yeah, I could, we could quibble over Scoot or Paolo, but those guys go to the top for me.
And without quibbling over him, I guess maybe a better way to look at this would be, okay, let's say we've got, 4th pick in the draft, which guarantees you one of Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, or Amin Thompson, right? How many of those guys would you then like rank above some of the other prospects from these past couple of years, right? Would you put, an Amin Thompson over Cade Cunningham? Would you put a Scoot Henderson over a Cade Cunningham or a Jalen Green? Where do those guys stack up against a Jabari Smith Jr. or a Paolo Banchero, right? And to me, what that says is, because again, like draft philosophy wise, like you and I would probably have drastically different lists.
Right.
And this would take us a whole episode to get through like a top 10 list of the last few drafts. This was a terrible idea to throw in the middle of a segment.
No, it's okay.
But it's okay. We're just
salvage it.
We're derailing from the top of the show. It's going to be fantastic.
Right.
Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go but up from here.
We got it.
But I think the point that I'm trying to get to here is essentially, I think when you look around the league, right? How many of those teams would you look at and be like, yeah, I would absolutely jump at the chance for for an Evan Mobley or for a Jalen Green or for a Cade Cunningham. That's the type of value that the number 4 pick basically has in this year's draft with any of, one of the Thompson twins or Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller. And that type of value, when you look at trading one of those players, a Cade or a Jalen or an Evan Mobley or a Paolo Banchero, those types of young, enticing prospects should be able to get you at least a borderline all-star, if not an already established all-star type player in a vacuum. And when you're looking at these hypotheticals, that's the kind of value that I think the number 4 pick provides. And I think that around the league, I think that's probably the perception as well.
Yeah. And it just goes back, like, once again, what is the view of the assets in the NBA? The reason first round picks are the flow of cash that we use to get players is because they have the most value. And when first round picks are defined, like ours is in the 4th spot, it's like a premium. It adds that much more value to it. A lot of these protections that these picks have that get traded around, top 8 protected, the teams still include them because they know there's a chance that they could get between, the first pick and the 8th pick, and they still value them. So when something that's top 5 and it's number 4, I think, using role players to trade back for that pick alone is just wild to me. But it really, even back to the exercise, like in the top 6, just go look at the draft in past years and see what type of players has really come out of that top 6 or 7 range over the years. And that really should help people reconsider how they're viewing this. I think the Rockets should approach that pick as like you said, a young all-star or near all-star level player. And to me, that's the line for me where I'm like, this is what I'm going to trade for it. Any like borderline starter or anything like that is just kind of silly, in my opinion.
Coming up, we're going to get into whether or not the Raptors could be a possible trade partner for the Houston Rockets, what that might mean as far as just a 1-for-1 trade or potentially a 3-team type deal, as well as a couple Rockets legends and who you might want to see in a Rockets jersey in next season, Eric Gordon or Patrick Beverley. We're going to get there in just one moment. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Next game, how about Jason Tatum to score more than 26.5 points? What about Bam Adebayo to have more than 7.5 rebounds? Or how about Jimmy Butler to have less than 6.5 assists? Or maybe Jalen Brown to have less than 3.5 three-pointers made? So what is Prize Picks? It's daily fantasy sports, but how does it work? Basically, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times back on your money on any entry that you submit. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available, and Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. Plus, here's the best part. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that simple. They're safe. They offer fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. And right now, every day of the NBA playoffs and still during the finals, one PrizePicks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. But to find out how, you have to download the app. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That means if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Be sure to stay tuned in throughout the week as we have you covered for all of the pre-draft rumors and speculation. And I'm sure at some point later this week, we're going to bring back up the old James Harden debate too. So don't want to miss out on that because that's going to be a thing all the way until July 1st. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Thankfully, no James Harden speculation in this episode. He's off limits in this episode.
I know it's a bit weird not talking about him, but I'll try to hold myself off.
I know, right? It just he is. We're just no Harden in this episode. Maybe we'll probably break that rule at some point. Let's take a look.
I'll bring it up. Yeah.
So looking at also shout out to Kelly Iko, who also mentioned on a recent podcast for The Athletic that the Raptors have actually called the Rockets about the 4th overall pick. And the Raptors are definitely one of those teams that you look at and you could easily and very realistically see them being a team that is trying to dig their way into the top side of the draft, right? Trade up and get into that top 4 range. Whether it's with the Rockets at pick number 4 or the Blazers at pick number 3 or even the Hornets at pick number 2, Masai Ujiri is definitely a guy who is very aggressive in his approach to improving the Raptors, building the team out, all that stuff. And I wonder what that would look like because to me, right, we talked about the value of that 4th pick in the first segment. I don't know if there's anything on the Raptors roster like right now in a vacuum that I'd feel great about trading the number 4 pick for, right? Like it's basically Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby and maybe Scotty Barnes. Like, does any of that sound enticing to you, Frank?
I mean, not to me, but according to Kelly Iko, it's not only enticing. In fact, we should throw the whole bag at one of their players. And shout out to him. I know he got a lot of grief for that article. And
no, he does fantastic. No, he does absolutely fantastic work. We just got to keep him away from the trade machine. That's all.
Yeah, bro. Just stay out of there. But I'm gonna read his trade first, and then we can talk about it. So he proposed that the Rockets to get OG Anunoby that we should give up KJ Martin, Tari Eason, the number 4 pick. Doesn't stop there. And a 2025 first round top 6 protected. So basically, you're giving up 2 top 6 picks, a lottery pick in Tari Eason, and a young player in KJ Martin, which is hella wild to me to give up for OG Anunoby. I look at their roster. One thing Toronto we can say they're good at is that they can get players that are either not valued highly enough or players, hidden gems. Like that's really what they do. They do a great job finding these hidden gem players and developing them very, very well. And for OG Anunoby, as much as I love him as a player, you think about the premise of Kelly's article, and he explained this on that podcast, is that he was operating under the conditions of James Harden. Sorry, we have to bring it up. Being on the team.
Knew we were going to break the rule.
I know. I'm sorry. I made it 2 minutes after saying I wouldn't. So James Harden being on the team and the team trying to be quote unquote phase 2 and being competitive and all that. And so that's the premise. And to me, OG doesn't move that needle at all, like at all. So I just don't see the value of mortgaging your entire, that's a lot of assets to move for a guy that's going to do what? Get us to a 6 seed with James Harden. To me, the context for a move like that is either A, you're bringing in a player that's better than James Harden that's going to help you because we're trying to win now move. Or you already have a player on the roster that's better than James Harden, and you're trying to solidify your team to compete for championships. Those are not types of trades that you make when you're just trying to be a team that's transitioning out of being a bottom tier team to a competitive team. And so for me, like the 4th pick, if it's not a young stud like the Jalen Browns of the world, the Mikal Bridges, I really don't want to hear it. I'd rather just draft one of these guys and just take my swing on upside, which I still think we're in the window of. Despite being in phase 2, we can still swing on upside because we still, we love all our players, but they're still undefined as to what their NBA career is going to be. So it's not like we've drafted Michael Jordan already. So, I'm definitely a big no to the Raptors roster for just the 4th pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I as much as I do like Scotty Barnes as a player, I just think he's so close to, if not kind of already at, like his ceiling more or less as a player. I don't think I would trade the 4th pick straight up for Scotty Barnes. Like that's how highly I view the guys who are available at 4, whoever is left out of that trio that we keep mentioning, Scoot, Brandon Miller, and Amin Thompson, or potentially even reaching further down the draft for like a Cam Whitmore or an Asar Thompson or a Jarris Walker. Any of those guys I would take and bet on their upside versus where Scotty Barnes is at right now, which says a lot because he won freaking Rookie of the Year. But
right.
What it does become kind of interesting is if Toronto is being super aggressive about trying to get into the top side of this draft, they could make a very realistic trade partner for the Portland Trailblazers, right? Where, if it's apparently by all reporting, it seems like the Nets do not want to give up Mikal Bridges under any circumstances. So they're just like, no, we're, untouchable. So that ship has sailed maybe for the Blazers to pair Mikal Bridges with Dame. And if the Raptors are looking to get rid of one of Pascal Siakam and or OG Anunoby, Siakam could be the kind of guy that the Blazers take a hard look at with that number 3 overall pick. And if they do that, that could bode well for the Rockets because, again, Amin Thompson to me screams like he is a Masai Ujiri guy. Like, I could absolutely see the Raptors going to pick number 3 and saying, Amin Thompson, that's our guy. And then somehow Scoot Henderson falls back to the Rockets at 4.
I mean, the Masai Ujiri guy is the non-shooting athlete. I think that's what he gets off to. Like, oh yeah, he can't shoot. He's tall. He has a long wingspan. Yeah, bring him. He's a Raptor.
Amin Thompson, you are right. A Toronto Raptor. There we go.
Toronto Raptor. You were born. You and your brother. But yeah, I think that the Blazers. I think the Nets are capping. I'm not even gonna lie. I think that's cap. Every team, oh yeah, he's off the books, but I think, the offers has to be just right. They're just gassing up his value so that when the time does come that they can get what they want. But, with the trade with Siakam or OG to the Portland, I think that's definitely something that we should look to trying to get involved in. And then you get into the question of, okay, if you don't like OG Anunoby with that, maybe the 4th pick and some other future assets, why should who matters on the upper end of the draft? And we talked about this last time. And it gets down to, do you think Scoot Henderson is worth whatever you're going to be trading for? Is he does he meet the definition I just laid out for myself, which is a young stud? And yes, yes, I think he fits the definition of a young stud. And shout out to Beema Thug, David Weiner on Twitter, pointing out that the value of also getting one of these young guys on the contractual end, as opposed to trading for a player that's going to give you a bigger cap hit, is also something that should be considered, because not only you getting a potential all-star level player out of the draft, you're also getting somebody that's going to be leave no trace of salary on your
very
books.
cost controlled. Yeah.
Right. So there's other value to just getting these players rather than just adding salary to your salary sheet for a guy that may or may not even help you do what you're trying to do in the short term. And I think, to me, all of this, I think we need to just look and see, what are we doing? And, maybe we can talk about this in the future. Like, the Rockets really, I'm assuming that everything they're doing is like a bunch of smoke screens and just trying to let everybody know that they're everywhere with everything. But for the fan base, just think about, like, what are you guys trying to draw out of this, where we are in this rebuild? Like, what is your end game? Because if you think that mortgaging your future to be a 6 seed right now is worth the past 3 years, I just want everybody to take a step back and just look at, like what does it take to build a contender, and how do you get there? And especially looking at how Denver, who has been, banging on the door of this, or what they've been doing for the past, since, maybe six years. Jokic has been on that team for 8 years. They've been trying and losing in the different rounds in the playoffs, kept their core together, kept their coach together. These things take time, and you have to be patient with the guys that you bring in. And if you want the microwave, let's get to the playoffs and get on ESPN, that's cool. But if you're trying to be a team that's going to build something that's sustainable over time, then you really have to make really good decisions with not only your players, but some of these assets that we have. And Keldon Johnson doesn't really just do that for me. So, it's just, or Jordan Poole.
Keldon Johnson's not a needle mover for you, man. He's not doing it for you.
Get me off. Nah, that's not doing it for me, man. So, yeah, I just think that we just need to all take a deep breath and take a step back on everything.
Coming up, I want to reply to that. I want to get back to that topic, as well as we want to get to our would you rather between Rockets guard legends Eric Gordon and Patrick Beverley. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Frank, I think you brought up a great point, right? About what, just the direction of this team. And this is something that we could, unpack over the course of, an entire freaking week. It would take multiple episodes, right? The different options, the different ways that things could go this offseason. But I do think that when you look at where things have kind of gone these last 3 years, I know that originally, Tillman Fertitta buys the team, takes over, inherits like this, 65-win monster. And then, in the immediate aftermath of that, there were some decisions made, right? The perception of Chris Paul's contract, trading him for Russell Westbrook, like all that stuff. I do think, though, that over these last 3 years, ownership has kind of been forced to make a really tough decision, which is, hey, we're going to bottom out, right? We're going to rebuild, and we're going to be bad. And it's not an easy decision to make, right? We see lots of organizations that do not want to bottom out. They do not want to subscribe to a rebuild for all the reasons, not just the on-the-court product, but the business incentives of a rebuild, right? And how much that hurts your bottom line for being a bad team for so many years. So I want to say that I'm cautiously optimistic that they've earned maybe the benefit of the doubt for kind of dealing with these last 3 years. And at any point, right, they could have broken the glass and done a bad trade or mortgaged like future assets or a young guy to go get like a win now impact kind of guy. And even though the James Harden smoke, there I go, I broke the rule now. Even though the James Harden smoke is pretty like prominent, I still think that the right organizational move, right, is potentially, okay, they bring him back, but they don't then like try to Band-Aid fix it and trade for a Siakam or whoever, sign a Chris Middleton to pair with Harden to be like some like, ragtag 6-7 seed. I think the direction of the organization is trying to head is they want long-term future success, and they're not going to try and shortcut to get to that point. And that's what I think Harden is. Harden is like the stopgap, the guy who bridges the gap and kind of gets you back to a place of being competitive a little bit quicker, but without like that Band-Aid fix. If some of that makes sense. Like I'm just at a point where we got to see it play out, but I'm cautiously optimistic that they're not going to like fumble and do the wrong thing and like trade the 4th pick for Pascal Siakam or do whatever, make those bad, like Sacramento Kings-esque type roster decisions, which, that's a stray to the Kings, but for the better part of 17 years, that's kind of how things went over there. So I think it's deserved.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down to what is James Harden's expectations of coming here, and what are the Rockets' expectations of him being on the team. And it seems like it's going to be something that's going to happen. And it's just, to me, it matters like what are the terms of that? What does that look like? And I've heard people ask, well, can they do a middle ground of trying to be competitive and at the same time develop, which I think is the best path. I just don't know what phase 2 means to Rafael Stone and Tillman Fertitta. And I think that's really what's going to determine that. If phase 2 is we're trying to win at all costs, then bringing back James Harden alone, and even if you bring him back with another player, like even a Mikal Bridges, is not going to win you anything. Like I said earlier, you have to have somebody that's clearly better than him to even have a chance. And what does that cost? That may be everything. So it's going to be a big summer, and we're going to see. But I just think that for the team, I do agree with you. I think Ime Udoka being in that brain trust now also, to me, adds a lot of credibility to what they're going to be doing, because that you have somebody that is an NBA regular, that's been around the league, has been around winning. And so that also eases me a bit to know that he's in there. Like, he's not going to, hopefully their value is opinion, and he's not going to let us crash out trying to be a 6 seed when he can see the young talent. I think he chose to come here because of the young talent and the flexibility we have. So you hope that that they know what they're doing. But this is a big summer for everybody in that front office. They've gotten away with the tank being the umbrella for good, bad, and indifferent that's happened in the organization. Now you got to perform. So we'll see what they really have in their bags and what they can do in trying to build a real winning roster.
Yeah, they've been hiding behind the tank shield, if you will, or they've just been not even hiding behind the tank shield. They've been in the tank, and they've been bulldozing all the accusations, and now they're like poking their head out of the top of the tank, and they've actually got to face reality and like see like, oh, this is what running a competent organization might actually look like. But to your point about Udoka, right? He is the really interesting variable here. To my understanding, is that he is being heavily involved in all the decision-making process moving forward, right? That, being consulted on what their opinions with the draft, as well as roster construction. We already know he's got the autonomy to, select his own staff. Like, he's been given a lot of power very, very quickly, at least as far as just he is now very much added in that brain trust. Whereas before, it was very evident that Steven Silas was not in that brain trust, right? Like, the brain trust was Rafael Stone, Eli Whitus, and Pat Fertitta, and that was that. And now it very much feels like Ime Udoka is now in that core of 3, and now it's a quartet, if you will, as far as the primary decision makers and the driving forces behind the organization. Now, Rockets fan favorite, former point guard Patrick Beverley was recently on his podcast, and he was actually asked, do you really think that James Harden is going to go back to Houston, and is there any chance of you reuniting with him back in Houston? And Pat Bev said, very high chance. That was one of my decisions when I got traded from the Lakers. Houston was one of my, options, but they told me, Pat, we don't need you right now. You might not play. We need you to mentor young guys, blah, blah, blah. And he says, I still wanted to play. Now that's a factor in whatever veterans the Rockets look to bring in, right? We've talked about this before. You have to have the right vets, the ones who can be kind of bought into the idea of, hey, there might be games where you don't play at all, and there might be games where we lean on you really heavily. It just kind of depends based on matchup or based on how good or bad some of the young guys are playing, that kind of thing. We also know that Eric Gordon has a chance to become a free agent this offseason, depending on what the Clippers decide to do or not do with his contract moving forward. It is fully non-guaranteed, so they could essentially waive him, let him go, and just not pick up that year on his deal. It's effectively a team option. So he might be a free agent this summer. Frank, if you had a choice between Pat Bev and Eric Gordon and bringing one of them back to the Houston Rockets moving forward, who would you take and why? Oh, man.
As much as I love EG, I got to go with Pat Bev because, one, we've seen how EG kind of, that it didn't end bad, but I don't know. It was kind of weird how that kind of phased out. I mean, it kind of apexed at him sitting there staring blankly, having an existential crisis on the benches. Jabari and Jalen were trying to fight each other. So probably thinking like, where am I? If you watch those movies,
that 1,000-yard stare,
yeah, it goes, yeah, that's me. How did I get here?
Record scratch, freeze frame. I should have a record scratch audio soundbite on the soundboard. All right, I'm adding that for the next show.
Yeah, but I think Pat Beverley, well, first of all, he's undefeated in the play-in. So if we're going to be a play-in team, I'd rather have the not the Jerry West, because he lost a lot. Like, who's
the Jimmy Butler of the play-in. There you go.
Jimmy Butler of the play-in. Like, this dude is undefeated in the play-in. I want him standing on the announcers tables at Toyota Center, waving at the crowd with his shirt off, as we finally crack, being a 500 team at the last game of the season. I'm there for all the antics. Pat Bev, and I think it's a position of need. Like, Eric Gordon is redundant with multiple players that we have. I think Pat Beverley has shown that he can take a backseat to young, up-and-coming players. He's shown in when he was in Minnesota. He's obviously a locker room leader. He's a guy that I've wanted on this team because I think Jalen, Kevin Porter, if he's still there, whoever, Josh Christopher, all our guards, even Jabari, Sengun, they need somebody that's going to cuss them out in practice. They need somebody that's going to let them know that they're not doing right. The stuff that John Wall tried to do for them, the stuff that Eric Gordon tried to do in his own way, but that's not Eric's personality. And to me, the age of our guys, we need a Patrick Beverley. Now, if we can get both of them, obviously, Eric Gordon's a Houston legend. I would never disrespect him. He is always welcome back. If there's a way to get him back on the team. I just think that he was asked to do something that he was not equipped to do. And but yeah, if you had to make me pick, gun in my head, I'm going Pat Bev.
I think I'm right there with you, man. I wanted Pat Bev as like a mentor on this team for a long time. The part that stands out to me is the idea of, still wanting to play. And that's the part that might throw a wrench into the situation, right? Because when you're looking at, Jalen Green, probably Kevin Porter Jr. still on the roster, maybe a potential James Harden return. That's like the 13th time that we've broken the rule on this podcast. Shout out to 13 himself. But, just there, at what point do you run out of minutes for your guards, right? At what point does he become, a third string insurance policy vet versus a vet who's actually getting like meaningful rotation minutes? It kind of becomes the problem. So, but if he's able to buy into a role, if he's able to buy into that veteran mentorship, locker room presence type guy, and if Harden comes back to Houston and he's down to like reunite with him and all that, I would absolutely throw money on the table for Pat Bev. And that could be, he could be had for like the room exception. You might be able to throw him like a little, 2 or 3 million, sorry, not 2 or 3 million, 2 or 3 year deal, out of your cap space, 8 to 10 million a year. Like, he is not going to be an expensive free agent whatsoever. And the amount of, I think, off the court stuff that he just brings to your team, right? The leadership, the ability to kind of bring these young guys along, all of that, the intangibles, if you will. He would absolutely be the exact type of veteran that you want around these young guys. I think there's something special, right? When you look at a guy like a Pat Beverley, or you use PJ Tucker as one of the examples, guys who have had to really like fight and claw and grind their way to their NBA career, right? Did like the overseas stint, that kind of thing, because those guys have, I think, like even greater appreciation for like what that means to be an NBA player, to have a team, to know that you've got your future ahead of you, all that stuff. And those are the types of lessons that can be imparted to a young guy that maybe like an assistant coach can't necessarily like relate with a player on that level. But a guy like Pat Bev kind of can. So I think I'm with you there, but we want your thoughts. Let us know in the comments if you had your choice between bringing Eric Gordon back to the Houston Rockets or bringing back Patrick Beverley. Who would you want to see in a Rockets jersey next season? On that note, Frank, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
Yeah, obviously Rockets Chop Shop on YouTube and ACS Chop Shop on Twitter. We just, one of our writers, James Piercy, just wrote an article, and you guys can go to the Rockets Chop Shop page and check it out. The link is on there. Just talking about the kind of the feedback from some subsection of the fan base about, like even for you, Jackson, or me, or us content creators, writers, just basically saying that we're people too. If y'all think our trades are trash, let us know, but let's not get disrespectful, because if y'all know me, y'all wouldn't say that in person. So, shout out to all the content creators out there on every platform that we have. Yes, sometimes we say trash stuff like trading Jabari in the 4th pick, and y'all let me know loud and clear. I hear y'all, but let's keep it respectful, and just understand that we're all just trying to make it out this phase 1.
And that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.